Okay, so just so you know a little bit of who I am. You all know I'm married to Nina, which is why you all tolerate me. Okay. You know I'm married and have 2 daughters. You know I'm a lawyer. You know that I'm the assistant city prosecutor for the city of Pasadena. You know that I'm attending seminary at Wesley Biblical Seminary, which is in Mississippi. You also know that I'm a member of the Wesleyan Covenant Association's Global Council, that I got elected to that. You know me. But the reason for this sermon today is for a guy you don't know. In fact, for 2 people you don't know. One's named Michael Moody, and the other is Ronald Garlington. Now, I'm going to go back to Mr. Moody. Mr. Moody is a homeless man. He's 58 years of age. He hangs around the city of Pasadena. And on Monday, this last Monday, he comes up to me as he was going to court, and he says, "Mr. Smith, I need some help." Actually, he says, "Mr. DA, I need some help." Somehow some of my brethren can't distinguish the fact that I'm a city prosecutor as opposed to being a district attorney, which I used to be, but you get the drift. So he asked for some help. He is an addict, and he has mental problems. Now, whether he was mentally ill before he was an addict or an addict before he became mentally ill, I don't think anybody but God would know. So I said to Mr. Moody, "I will help you, but I've got to go to court. You come with me." This was at 8:30 a.m. At 9 a.m., I called for someone to come and help, and they have what they call this HOPE team. And don't ask me what those acronyms stand for anymore, but the idea was that somebody was going to come and help Mr. Moody find some residential treatment and get off the streets. He had to wait till 12 p.m. for that person to come, as well as for me to get out of court. So at 12 p.m., a nice lady by the name of Erin Butler showed up from Union Station. Union Station is a homeless project that's run out of downtown Los Angeles that helps in the area to get people who are homeless out of being homeless and into some kind of transitionary housing or into an alcohol or drug program or to whatever they need. At 12:45, Erin Butler was able to find Mr. Moody a place at a place called Charterhouse. At about 1:10, we were able to find a police officer from the Pasadena Police Department that was going to deliver Mr. Moody to Charterhouse. Now, the funny thing is, we can't go inside Charterhouse. Mr. Moody, all by himself, has to go into Charterhouse. And he has to tell them, "I need help." Mr. Moody was told, "Man, you got to tell them yourself. Also got to tell them you need your medication, both mentally and for any other conditions that you have." At 2:30 p.m., Mr. Moody was turned away from Charterhouse by one Alicia Rivera. Ms. Rivera went on to call Miss Erin Butler and curse her out for doing so, for sending him. Now, the reason I'm giving you this statement is Mr. Moody was carrying a Bible that he does not read. And one of my jobs, or one of my missions, I should say, privately as it's kept now, it's not going to be, is I walk around a little bit after work, and I try to help homeless individuals not become homeless anymore. And I particularly look for African American or black males because there's so many of them. Mr. Moody was one of my projects, as it were. So Mr. Moody doesn't read the Bible, but I turned them to that same passage. And I told him, look, even if you don't believe, look where this is. It's in the first chapter. It's not hidden somewhere in the middle of the book. It's not hidden somewhere in the end of the book. In the very first chapter. Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Genesis 1:27. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So I tell Mr. Moody, you're created in the image of God. Now think about that. So I have this class in moral thought, and it's taught by a professor by the name of Stephen Blakemore. Stephen Blakemore got his MDiv, because we know we like education, got his MDiv from Asbury Theological, and he got his PhD from the University of Tennessee. And he taught me that there's only two religions that have that concept, that doctrine, that you are made in the likeness and the image of God. It's only Judaism and Christianity. Islam has no such thing, and that's another story. Just like that idea about we had that male and female, that's another story. But the concept that God reached out to humanity and humanity to God, that you have just a little bit of the word to know, is only in our religion and Judaism. That's it. Hallelujah. That's right. He says that man and woman is created in the image of God, implies that God has ownership of our lives. And we are to live reflecting God's will by our very nature of pursuing what is good and not bad. St. Catherine of Siena, who was born in 1347, so it was a while ago, died in 1380, who was a doctor of the church, which means in the Catholic Church, she's one of the 36 special readings other than the Word of God in the Bible that should be considered. She says, in a book called Her Dialogue, that looking in the mirror is like looking at the image of God. And God gives us a soul of great dignity that we should be thankful for God for. Now, what does that mean? Concept that we are tied to humanity and God are tied together, and we are humanity, and that we have this soul that has this special dignity, that we are made in the image of God. When I spoke to Mr. Moody about that, I said, what do you think God, if you are made in the image of God, do you think God would make you an addict? Do you think God would want you living in the street? And ultimately, Mr. Moody agreed. Now, I'm going to give you a little point here. And the reason I said this thing about my brother, Ronald Garlington, is because both of us were born from an alcoholic father. Different mothers, but born from an alcoholic father. An abuser, not only of alcohol, but an abuser of his wives, at the very least, as well. My brother was able, with his mother, to find a man by the name of Frank Garlington that would raise him. My mother was able to find a man by the name of Gordon Specs Powell, who would raise me. Ronald Garlington grew up a devout Catholic. I grew up a devout Anglican. Okay? My father was Catholic, got converted by my mom, and just coincidentally, I got converted to Methodism by my wife as well. So, following in Dad's footsteps. But the point is, somewhere along the line, Michael Moody, Ted Smith, who's 64, and my brother, who's 54, followed different paths, different understanding of who you are. My brother is a principal of a school in Atlanta. I'm a lawyer. We both came from alcoholic fathers as well. What I'm trying to tell you here is what Alicia Rivera did is not understanding the dignity of what's in you and what you can be at any time once you know. Forget about being a true Christian. Forget about this. This is the Old Testament. I want you to think about this. Think about if everybody just believed that they were made in the image of God. Think what that would mean. That your soul has a special dignity, that every time you looked at in the mirror, you weren't balding, you weren't too dark, you weren't too light, you didn't have enough hair, you didn't have green eyes or blue eyes, you didn't have blonde hair, you weren't too tall, you weren't too short. God made you. When you look at yourself, you're God. You are not ugly. You're not too dark. You're not worried about the color of your eyes, the color of your hair, the color of your skin. Think about that. The basic tenet of our religion, the first step in this whole process, you're made in the image of God. Look what happens in our everyday lives. I went to Kaiser the other day to pick up some medication because I had a crazy abscessed tooth, and I had to get some antibiotics. I walk into Kaiser Cadillac, and there I am. And they're more afraid of COVID than I am. They got you lined up, tossed around, picked on, everything else, any way they can think about making sure you can't get into the building. But when I went to the pharmacy has a line, and it's outside of the building. And they only let so many people in. And where's the line? Sitting in the middle of the sun, outside, 6 feet apart. There we are, all standing outside. You think that's reflective of the human dignity of who you are while you're trying to get some kind of medical help? And I'm not talking bad about Kaiser in particular, but think about this. Think about your daily activities. Do you believe that sometimes you are treated as if you are made in the image of God? I'm using Kaiser as an example. But how many times have you been on the phone and you pick up and you call somebody or you call some agency, you call your bank, and they say, due to the high call volume, you have to wait 4 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours. But your call is very important to us. You laugh, but it's true. Think about what happened at Ole Miss in Tennessee yesterday in the football game. Throwing golf balls because they were upset at how the game ended. A game, a football game, a game. Not how their mother was treated, not how their father was treated, not how they were treated. A game. We've lost something in our ability, even in the most basic tenet of seeing the human dignity in other people and seeing it in ourselves. Because guess what? If you're throwing the golf ball, you don't see it in yourself either. Because think about it. If you were seeing some value in your own life, why would you do something like that? Now, I must add that I've been a prosecutor for 30 years, and I have prosecuted people for their criminal activities, and many of them were just lost. They didn't understand the value of their life. They decided to take something as opposed to earning it. Now, I must admit there were some people who were just downright evil, okay? They've decided that this was the course in life that they were going to choose. But beyond that, many of them were just lost, controlled by other things. But think about this. Look at Ole Miss. Look at how we treat Dave Chappelle, or John Gruden for that matter. Do you think if we saw the value in human activity, if we saw the value in privacy or dignity of a human being to have that privacy, we would consider maybe John Gruden in a different light and consider Dave Chappelle in a different light as well? How about Thomas Jefferson or Andrew Jackson, for that matter, and their statues? Do we consider that? We've lost something. Amen. We've lost something. And I'm not saying today you need to go out and tell everybody that they've got to be a Christian. The first chapter of the book. And while I was in class, I remember our professor asked me, he says, you have two passages where you say the same thing. And he goes, did you ever think about why that is? I never forget, I raised my hand on my Zoom class and said, yeah, because man's stupid. You got to say it twice. You got to say it again. And so we do. We say it not only in Psalm 8, we also say it in various other places too. You can look at, let's see, what is it? It is Psalm 80 as well. It's there as well. And in other places about the value of human dignity. Lastly, if this doctrine was practiced, if we practiced this, do you think we would have this issue between the United Methodist Church and the formation of the Global Methodist Church? Think about this. In all our humanity, the reason other people don't see us like sometimes we see ourselves in the mirror is because in our actions, even with ourselves, we don't reflect that we are made in the image of God. Imagine if the Council of Bishops of the United Methodist Church, heck, if our bishop, Grant Hagia, saw the value of our human dignity and the right for us to practice our faith accordingly, what would he say? He says no now because he does not see that value. They say no now because they don't see that value. I want you to turn to the right and to the left of you and look at each other. You see the value of the individual worth and faith and the fact that the people you sit next to are made in the image of God because you are here. Right here in church, you know the other person. You know me. You know the pastor. You know the pastor's wife. But how do you do that when you go to the cashier this afternoon, when you go buy something, do you reflect to them the fact of their dignity and their worth? Do you see God in them? We are losing because of our inability to reflect the basic tenet of our faith, the respect and human dignity that when you look at somebody else, you see a soul that has some special value. No matter where they are, what they're wearing, the color of their skin, the color of their hair, how tall or how short they are. I want you today to think on that. I want you, when you go leave from here and you go out this week, to reflect on how you treat others. Do you show them that you are a Christian? The reason Mr. Moody came up to me is because I've spoken to him several times, and I'd never, ever judged Mr. Moody. I saw the value of a lost soul, and I wanted to help him. And I wanted to help him when he wanted to be helped. Hallelujah. And he came. And thankfully, when Mr. Moody was turned away, Aaron Butler and Officer Jones, the one who took him, also saw the value of Mr. Moody. And they wound up picking him up from Charterhouse before he walked out the door, never to be seen again. And we found another place for him because we saw the value in him. It took us all day, but we didn't give up. And I don't want you to give up. I understand. Mr. Moody is just one soul. It's all day. We didn't find another place till 6 p.m. at night. It was all day. One guy all day. What's the value of Mr. Moody's soul? Think on that. I think it's everything. There may be a million other people, but I got one. And I want you to go out there, and I want you to get one. Just one. You have to understand that when you see the destruction of our system and our church and everything else, it's because of one simple tenet of our faith: the failure to see the value of the other person. Amen? Thank you.